This segment brought to you by the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center in Oakley.
Well, while in Missouri, or while in St. Louis actually, Joann Van Covern and her husband Greg and some of our other friends with the Santa Fe Trail Association took a riverboat cruise, a dinner cruise. And I was thinking while on the Mighty Mo about those people who had taken riverboats in the early days to the Kansas Territory, and just all the people who had traveled that river. And I thought about where we live in western Kansas on the Smoky Hill, and how that water in the Mighty Mo right there came all the way from eastern Colorado and western Kansas. What a great connection. Our rivers are barriers, but they're also byways, and they're the arteries, they're the lifeblood of the nation. And man, we've got a pretty significant one and a pretty big connection with the Mighty Mo. As a child, I watched the sun go down over the Blue Ridge Mountains, sinking behind Fisher's Peak and Fancy Gap on the Virginia-North Carolina line. Our lives had a soundtrack, and a part of the soundtrack was the song Shenandoah. While the valley and the river by that name were both north of us, we were part of the same Blue Ridge Mountains, that great blue wall that had to be overcome in America's move to occupy the continent. I imagined what lay beyond those peaks, the prairies and plains, the rivers and the Rockies. I imagined the West, as those pioneers had imagined the West beyond the Blue Ridge. Away we're bound away, across the wide Missouri. I grew up, crossed the Mississippi and the Missouri, and made Kansas my home. Over the course of those years in Kansas, I have seen the wide Missouri many times. In 1993, when the levee was breached in Atchison, I stood on the overlook at Benedictine College and beheld a mighty river that had claimed the bottomland as far as you could see. The Mighty Mo, the Big Muddy, too thick to swim, too thin to plow. America's longest river forms the northeastern boundary of Kansas. The relationship of Kansas with the Missouri River is far deeper than the map would suggest. The Missouri brought French trappers to what would become the Louisiana Purchase. It brought Lewis and Clark to our banks, and it brought the Free Staters and the pro-slavers to Bleeding Kansas. Our Kaw or Kansa River, formed at Junction City by the Republican and Smoky Hill rivers, pours into the Big Mo at Kansas City. Steamboats plied the river, bringing goods to the docks at Leavenworth and Atchison, some even venturing up the Kaw. The Steamboat Arabia Museum in the city market area of Kansas City is one of the most exciting finds in American archaeology, offering us just a clue of the treasures buried in the mud of the Missouri. Fine china and logging chains, pickles and perfume, buttons and nails, hats and boots and bolts of cotton, everything one needed to make a home and a living in 1856 was contained in the Arabia, buried for decades in a Kansas cornfield. When we think of what is wild and wonderful in the great Kansas outdoors, our rivers are a big part of that story. The tributaries of the Missouri define the upper reaches of our state, and the tributaries of the Arkansas, which eventually joins the Mississippi, are the arteries of the lower half of the Sunflower State. These waterways have been the lifeblood of the plains for thousands of years, providing food and transportation, sustenance, and sport. Explore our rivers, and if you get the chance, take a riverboat along the Mighty Mo. Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on three main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.